Hi, I'm Kelly Forden. I'm here today with Lolita Hernandez, and we're talking about her story, Process Server. And I'm so excited. It's from her collection, Making Callaloo in Detroit. And I just wanted to, oh, I'm glad you have that there. Yay. It's one of my favorite collections. And I just wanted to start today. Do you want to just talk about like the overall theme of the collection?
Yeah, and I want to thank you for including me in your blog. I just want to say it sort of forced me to revisit Process Server, which is a story I have not revisited since this whole collection was published. The whole collection actually hinges on my making stories, making bacalao, making callaloo, and making buljol, which are my favorite foods from my, Trinidad and Tobago heritage. Mm-hmm. And all of those stories were really sort of specific to memories of family and growing up with them and so on, and food as a way to understand it, my mother and so on and so forth. And then other stories got roped into it because they were Detroit and they were things that were happening at the time that I began writing that collection as a way to remember family as I was growing up, okay? And Process Server ended up being something that I can't even figure out how I did it. But anyway, I remember when Annie and I were trying to sort out this, I have to tell you this is too funny.
Okay.
When it got accepted by Wayne State University Press, and we were trying to figure out, like, well, how do you organize this thing? We were actually in Kresge Court at the DIA,
yeah,
and we laid everything out. And I said, I have no idea. I said, but the making stories are the cornerstones for the whole book. And so that's how it got to be like, I can't remember which one it opens up with, but it was like, making bacalao, and making this and making that. And then everything else, somehow or the other, we figured out a way to shove them
inside. Yeah. Oh, that's great. So they're like, how many of those making stories are there? I wish I had the...
There are 3 of them. I have them right here.
Okay.
And I'm going to do Making Buljol was the first one. I think it could be probably my favorite story. But then
yeah, I know. I love that
favorite food.
I love that.
And Process Server, for some reason or the other, fell under that. And then for some reason or the other, 5 workers report on how the deal really went down, which is about the time I was retiring from General Motors. Mm-hmm. And then No Puedo Bailar. And then it was Making Bakes.
Oh, that's right.
And,
yeah.
Yep. And then it's like, sometimes you leap, sometimes you fall, which I have no idea, but it was just it was something about a woman and her mother and just, And then there was Sadie and Mark Quay and Adios Detroit. And then it was Making Callaloo, which is really important story for me because it was about basically about a really favorite aunt of mine from Trinidad, and then the Over the Belle Isle Boundary and Old Year's Night and Love in the Dollar Store, which are really, so I don't know how any of those fit under those making categories, but somehow we made it work. It makes sense. It made sense at the time.
And did you do some that were first person and then some were third? You know how people switch back and forth with
perspective? Oh, yeah.
I know it's hard to remember after the fact, 4 or 5 years after the fact, what all the thought process is.
And who knows why something should be first or third.
Right.
I rarely do anything second. I can't offhand think of anything second. I think that's hard to pull off. Maybe it's just hard to pull off for me, but.
Right.
I think the story goes how it wants to go. It happens how it's going to happen.
Right. Well, and then I So you mentioned reading Process Server. Well, I was intrigued because you said it was from like I don't know how you put it, a different time in your life or a strange.
It did. I mean, it was, let me just say this, okay? One of the things I discovered when I was, when I was sort of prepping for this interview was that I, I rediscovered or re-remembered that there's a whole lot of magic in storytelling, and you have no idea sometimes of where these stories come from. Like the making stories, I understood where those came from because it was my culture and it was certain specifics that were important for me to capture that were in my heart. And they revolved around food some kind of way. But and then you know, there were other things like five workers report on how the deal really went down. It's me and my factory stuff, you know, it has to sneak in some kind of way. And then the Sadie and Marquay actually evolved from something I wrote for the Metro Time. So I mean, I could trace all of those stories. Process Server, when I went back and looked at it, I had no way of figuring out where in the heck that story came from. But it reminded me that stories come from a place sometimes you have no idea, and sometimes you discover there are things that are hidden in somewhere in there that you didn't even know were there, and it comes out just like.
Yeah. So those are not based on, that's not based on a neighborhood that you lived in or people you knew, or is it like an amalgamation of people you knew?
Process Server is definitely based on a neighborhood that I lived in. The neighborhood, frankly, was not like I described it, but there were the three women who were the center of it were women types that were in that neighborhood. And I didn't realize how much they had sunk into me.
And it's wild. I love the fact that they're all from different, well, we'll just start at the beginning and then we can go through it. So, okay, I was trying to figure out, it starts smack dab in the middle of the block, sat the three old women like queens reigning from sturdy outdoor rattan thrones. I love it. That's a great first line. But I'm just like, what? And I can totally see it. You know, it's awesome. People hanging out and it's, my grandmother was like that too, you know, really regal in her chair with her drink and her Kent, you know, Golden Light cigarette or whatever. Like, I mean, we used to call her Queen Mary, so I was totally picturing her. But
oh wow,
yeah. But anyway, so what year do you see it starting at right there? I mean, around what time period?
This time period, wow, it would have been 60s or something.
Okay. Because you've got the horseman. They took turns directing the horseman. Imagine the block having a horseman. So like an actual horseman there.
Horseman was not on the block.
Okay.
Horseman was out of Cadillac. I dragged him in.
Okay.
I just dragged. You know, it's like one of those things you just start of like, okay, let me put this on. Yeah.
Right.
You know, that kind of a thing.
But there was that actual, so in the 60s, because this is later in the story, but you talk about the Cadillac, what was it called? The black man's riding?
The Black Horsemen's Club or something like that. Which there was one there. So I would have been there in this, I would have met that particular person late 70s on through. I would have met that person. So that person would not have been on that block. But he once helped me out and brought me some sod or something when I was still living there.
Okay.
That's complicated. So maybe that's why he was in there.
But I love that. Like in fiction, you can bring in whoever you want to bring in.
expand the boundaries.
Yeah. Okay, so so Maria is the first one we meet, and she's been a widow for many years, and she's the one who's lived the longest on the block. I love this. Some said that she sat down and the block grew up around her.
Yeah. Well, that block actually, it was a tribute to her because that block was originally the neighborhood that we moved into at that time was predominantly Italian.
Okay.
But the church was run by a German pastor who was, we're not going to talk about him, not that church that's in the story, the Catholic Church.
Okay, got it.
So it was a lot of Italians in the neighborhood, and they didn't like us. Maria was different. She was the one, I call her Maria. She was different. She was very friendly and very wonderful. But we, you know, when we moved in there, most of the white people didn't want us there.
Right. Yeah, I mean, what's so cool about this story is that it brings back that time period, you know, where everybody was just living together on the block. And like Eva has come from Germany, and her husband has left her. Well, he went back to Germany to work. And then she stayed, and then she gets a job in the Italian restaurant thanks to Maria. So they're hanging out. I mean, I guess what I mean by cool is that, you know, there's a woman who's Italian, there's a woman who's German, and then there's Granny, I'm blanking on her, Ola May.
Ola May Hendricks.
Yeah.
Mrs. Hendry.
What's
Mrs. Hendry, that's what Maria called her. And she was a Southern African American from Three-Below.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, what did you mean by that? Three-Below? Is it because
I actually knew someone who was from Tupelo, Mississippi, who was from, how did they go? He always made a joke that he was just below Tupelo, Mississippi. That's where he came from. This is
okay,
Cadillac.
Just below, so he called it.
So we said we were from Three-Below, Mississippi. You know, it's just.
It was so funny. I love that. But they, so they're all hanging out. I mean, this is another thing that reminds me of like my grandparents in Cleveland, where I don't know if I've ever told you, not to get off the subject of the story, but my grandfather was from Ireland, and they all lived in this half of the house, and on the other half was this Russian Jewish family, and it was actually Bernie Siegel who created Superman. Can you believe it?
Wow.
So, but like if you go back to the census, and this is a little further back, but like the 1920s, 1930s, you know, every other house is someone from somewhere else. But then, of course, that all changed. But you kind of captured that.
Yeah.
Maybe the tail end of that period where everybody is together.
Well, yeah, my parents came from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And
the tail
part of that immigrant population, but we were of the darker persuasion.
Yeah.
And but it was mostly at that time. And then some African Americans started to come into the neighborhood, and so on and so forth. And I thought, I think now as we're talking that the story was kind of a fantasy.
Yes.
About probably what it would have been like, or how nice it would have been if everybody was, you know, that cool with each other. But that really wasn't true. It was a lot of tension. When I was growing up, I felt a lot of tension.
Yeah.
But there was Maria, and there was Ava, and I was the one who took her daughters to school. And so there were some things that, you know, you remember that that were really important, because, you know, I came from this little community. I was born in Detroit, but I came from this little community that was, you know, predominantly Caribbean. We had our little things that we do over here, and here it is. I'm taking these girls from Germany to cool, you know. It was kind of cool.
Yeah, it is cool. And I think that's what's great about fiction too. I was just going to say before you said you created this fantasy situation that, I mean, you created like a fairy tale situation in the story in which everybody's planting together and then they have hot dogs and it just seemed like lovely. Okay, so.
But heat the day, come on.
But it's not like that in the real world, but I felt good for a minute reading it. So we deserve like a minute or two of feeling
Yep.
good. And you gave it to us. So.
Well, thank you. I think when I was rereading this story, because I hadn't read it, the language was really, I don't want to say fairy tale-ish, but I mean, the language was really light and fun.
Yes.
And I was wondering, where in the hell did that come from?
I know, but every now and then you get like a feeling of redemption or something.
Yeah.
It's over you. Okay, but in here, okay, Olame, is it Olame who's the seer?
Yes.
And I thought she was gonna, so at the end, I thought she was going to see something about the process server, and I thought she would have like an insight or something.
She didn't.
No.
I don't want to offend anyone, but all of that church
Well,
stuff.
they're going to read the story. Like anyone who listens to this will hopefully have read the story beforehand, so we can reveal. But okay, so she doesn't see anything there, but she is just one of those people who knows stuff. And I have met people like that.
Yeah, they do. Actually, Olame, there was kind of an Olame-ish character. So all of these, the three women especially, and a couple of others are really based on some folks somewhere in my life. But the three women especially were based on three women who were in that neighborhood.
Okay.
And but Olame took the form of a character who appears in Autopsy of an Engine that we call Big Mama.
Oh yeah.
And Big Mama is very religious, and I think that whole thing about her becoming the Mother's Day person or something.
Yes, like being celebrated on Mother's Day.
Celebrate for Mother. That actually came out of Big Mama's personal experience, I think, when she became the Mother's Day person, and she had her own seat in the church and so on and so forth, which is not a church related to this neighborhood at all. But one of the things that I thought about when I realized where she came from as I was preparing for this is that once you're in a story, you become open to a whole lot of things that you can pick up Big Mama happening to tell you at a moment that's years down the road and totally unrelated, that she's the mother of the year or something and has her own seat in the church and so on and so forth, and you're like ready to pick it up.
Right.
Yeah, let's dump that one in.
Right. I can use that. Like a little gift. Yeah.
So I tell her I'm going to use this. She says, "Go for it."
Oh my gosh! Did she read this later? I mean, do you know if she read it?
She has the book, but you
Okay.
know, she knows that I use. She always knows when I'm using her in the story. She's one
Right.
of those characters that gets used.
That is so cool. Okay, let me ask. So then I love, okay, the parts about the AC units. I love, you know, where you position the AC unit and like how much electricity you're using. I mean, I thought that was a really good way of showing, you know, economic level in the neighborhood without actually saying anything else. And just, let's see, what else? Okay, you have this line here and I didn't know what it meant. Let's see, he was a horseman back then and managed to keep it up when he settled in Detroit and began making some of that long money at the Cadillac plant. What does that mean? Long
money?
Am I dumb? I don't know.
No, that's just our way of saying
Big money. Big money.
Big money according to what we think. It's like, oh.
Big, okay, long, like it's going to go a long way.
Yeah. It's a lot. Yeah.
So where was the Cadillac Black Horsemen's Club? Where was it located?
In the Cadillac Plant.
Oh, it was in there. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the members were there, although there was actually, I think, some kind of place where they stored their horses.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah, it's in the suburbs.
Okay.
But not where the housewives, suburban housewives are.
Yeah, where they could, where they could get them.
Throw that in there and throw it in there.
All right. So let's see. Okay, here's one of those moments that's really fairy tale-like that I love. So this is the late season weeding, and everybody's out. Late season weeding and maintenance activity would require a different set of motivations, but this day was about hot dogs and the first collective time in the new fresh air, the beginning of new life, the herald of warmth, and all that crazy and fabulous hope for a few months of relaxed and civilized living. I mean, so great. The neighborhood people were loaded with a special history of cooking, which inspired the melange, the cultural mix, the wonderful flights of flavors, the freedom to do whatever spice and not feel locked into specifics.
Yeah.
Can we just move there right now? What the heck?
Yeah.
I mean, I miss people, you know,
Yeah.
and going outside, and it just, maybe that's what makes it so magical too, is that we can't do this right now. You know, block parties and eating together. And
Oh, yeah, that's so true, though. That's so true.
I know. I'm glad I didn't bring my wine because I might. It's so sad. Okay. So they had daily meetings at Maria's, right? And then I love God's Little Acre Missionary Baptist Tabernacle Church. That I could totally picture that, just a small church on the end of the road.
On the end of the road, yeah. Used to be a store, probably.
Right. Okay. Okay, so then they're sitting there and they're talking, and this is where the process server comes up. So Granny, Eva, and Maria had long lost interest in orchestrating the proceedings. They were engaged in their usual round of stories, memories from past days, many educationals on their respective cultures. By the time Eva looked up in the middle of a laugh and saw him. And I was like, oh my God. You know, I mean, process server would be a perfect metaphor for the angel of death. And I thought for sure someone was just gonna drop over right then.
Okay,
But
so the
thank God.
process server, let me tell you, the process server actually was a real guy. I don't know if he was a process server, but
Okay.
I'm not completely nuts. The story actually was inspired by something. I was leaving my house, you know, when I was living in Lafayette Park.
Yeah.
Going to my car, and there was a guy who looked exactly like the process server guy, a big kind of, you know,
7 feet tall.
Pillsbury doughboy kind of pasty looking guy. And he came down the pathway to my place, or where my place is, and he was just walking back and forth, just kind of like that. I describe it, just like completely lost, like, what is he doing? He had this little black book, and he was, well, you know, the area I lived in was a community, so you would watch out and see what was going on. So I'm coming out, I see this guy doing this, and I'm wondering, what the heck is going on? He's not a burglar type, I don't think, but he looked like he was something, you know. And so I went to my car, and I'm sitting there looking at him, wondering, what was this all about? There was something strange about him, and that's what triggered the story.
So you never actually got to talk to him in real life.
No.
You know who he was in real life. See, I love that. That's another great thing about fiction, because I mean, the story that you come up with is probably way better than whatever he would have said in that moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It allows you to, you know, to take something and run away with it, which is,
Yeah.
but that's the kind of thing that happens when you're in the process of the whole process of telling stories, you know? And he triggered that story.
Wow. Oh my gosh. And then they all start praying. Um, I love this line. The man entered the block from the south, the side farthest from God's little acre, which made Granny immediately suspect that he was related to the devil. That's that magical
Okay, that day, I thought that day, there's something wrong about him.
That is perfect. Okay, what are Robert Hall cut and dark gray, the pants, Robert Hall, I don't know those pants.
Do you remember Robert Hall?
Nope.
Oh, I guess you're younger than I am. But Robert Hall was kind of a working class store where you went to get your, you know,
Your pants or whatever.
better clothing.
Down in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
I got there in '93, so I probably missed.
Oh no, it was long gone by then.
Okay.
It was in the days of Montgomery Ward. And,
Okay, yep. We had Montgomery Ward too in DC, but okay, and what's the that it reminded all three women of the bluing they used for decades to get their Monday wash whites just that brilliant. I'm surprised my mother-in-law hasn't told me about the bluing. What is the bluing?
Bluing, it used to come in a bottle like this, and you would add it to the rinse.
Okay.
It would really whiten the whites. Most women used it.
Huh. And where'd it go? Is it gone? Because
Yeah, it went in the whatever the rinse was. I don't know if there's such a thing as bluing now, but
okay.
it would go into the rinse wash. Of course, Mom, most of the time when I was young at home, she had the old wringer type washing machine. And so you'd have to wash the clothes and then drain everything. And then you'd have to fill it up with water again. And then you'd have to put the bluing in then. And then you had the wringer thing. And then you'd hang the stuff out to, you know, to dry and all that kind of stuff. So it was called bluing.
Bluing. Okay. All right. So what do you say? So in the end, obviously he just goes on his way and they're okay, which is good news for everyone. But what did you think the story was about? I mean, I thought it was like about the power of community and sticking together and just a happy, I don't know, community feel. But I want to know what you thought the story was about in the end, rather than me.
It was I think it's like the last paragraph is, so when Granny and Maria squeezed her hands, they're squeezing Ava's hand. Ava had a really bad situation. I mean, she was here from Germany all by herself. Her husband deserted her, and her girls haven't come back from Germany. They had gone there to be with the father. So they gave her the strength to refocus and to wonder, as she had over the years, how long it would be until things would change for her. Indeed, how long until. At that thought, she turned full to Granny and Maria, and the three smiled at each other in a way you could only smile, crooked but firm, like when you are in the full knowledge of what life can give. So it's, you know, and then just then the horseman and his son came over to escort the ladies to the food. The strange man had disappeared.
Yeah.
So it's like some juju
Yeah.
the women had, and maybe the appearance of the horseman and this evil devil guy, whatever he was, with his bluing shirt.
Is gone. It's almost like the power of friendship. You know how you choose your family.
Yeah.
And this is like her chosen family.
Yeah.
And they can ward off everything together.
Yeah.
You know, have each other. It's really beautiful.
I think it was meant to be a comfort. I don't know.
It's a huge
I
comfort.
don't think it meant it to be anything, but that's how it worked out to be kind
That's
of.
how I felt when I was reading it. I just felt very comforted. Like this is what's possible. You know, this is the kind of life we could all be living.
Yeah.
If it weren't for.
If it weren't for. So you see, it was a true fantasy.
Maybe not for long. November. All right. Well, anyway. Thank you so much. That was really fun to talk to you. I miss you.
I miss you too, Kelly. Thank you very much for doing this.
You're welcome.
Energetic. My goodness. I just sit here and blow bubbles and cry half the time. You are, you know.
That's what I'm doing the rest of the time. This is like.
Oh, okay. This is your escape from that, right?
Yeah.
This is the hand-holding thing.
Yeah. I'm going to pour my wine now.
Okay, then. Good deal. Well, I got to finish off with my iced tea.
Okay. Okay, bye. Love.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Love to talk to you. Bye.
Bye.